Well, there's plenty going on in GAA at the moment off the pitch. Much of it centres on Clare. Based on a county board meeting this week, it seems the much talked about winter of discontent looks set to continue. It's kept pace through the springtime, looks set to truck on into the summer. Lots of acrimony flying around. Previous to this week, Pat Fitzgerald of Clare County Board has described some of what's going on as a witch hunt. Plenty of other respected voices in Clare GAA are unhappy with aspects of how things are being done in the county, and we saw that again this week at a county board meeting. Mick Foley of the Sunday Times with us. Hi, Mick.
Hey, Joe, how are you?
Yeah, very well. So reading some of the transcript of this meeting during the week, it's tetchy. There's clearly a lot of history built up, a lot of animosity. Lines in the sand are well drawn. It centres initially anyway on the under-20 hurlers not having food after training at the moment, and so Niall O'Connor of Éire Óg, he went and raised €4,000. And you can pick it up there. Michael Gallagher, the County Board Treasurer, I guess questioned the motivation behind raising the money.
That's essentially it. As you say, the Clare under-20s didn't have access to meals after training at the moment. Now, according to Michael Gallagher, it would have been a kind of a standard procedure that they would have had hot meals, I think 3 weeks coming up to a championship game, 3 weeks before a championship game, that would kick in. And there would also be maybe tea and sandwiches and things like that provided after training. But these things weren't in place anyway this year. So as you say, Niall O'Connor goes. He's a member of the Éire Óg club. His father would also be Jerry O'Connor, who would have been involved in a managerial position with the Clare senior hurlers back before Brian Lohan. So Niall goes, raises the $4,000 to cover the meals for the under-20s. And it's greeted, it's brought up last night, and it's greeted by Michael Gallagher with a thanks and a kind of appreciation for what Niall did. But there's also the question, well, what's the motivation behind doing this? Essentially, are you trying to embarrass the county board? And it goes on from there. I suppose, when you look at it in the context, I suppose Niall O'Connor would also have been very much involved in the conceiving and in the putting together of a strategic review committee for Clare that's now in place, looking at ways that Clare can do their business better. It's an independent group, and that in itself initially would have caused a lot of tension, putting that group together and putting it in place. So that's kind of the background there a little bit. It's just very unfortunate, and there was requests last night from the county vice chairman Kieran Keating and others as well to withdraw the comments in relation to Niall O'Connor. Treasurer didn't take up the opportunity to withdraw them, so they're kind of left there on the record now. So it's just a very unfortunate set of events. Very unfortunate that the Treasurer would decide to have a go at a guy who went and raised a four-figure sum to pay for some meals for an inter-county hurling team.
I'm sure local politics are tetchy in GAA right around the country, so maybe it would be wrong to classify this as unique or somehow extraordinary. But to give people a sense of how tetchy maybe it became this week, Rory Hickey, he's an Éire Óg delegate, as is Niall O'Connor, who raised the money. He said Niall O'Connor raised more in 4 hours than the Clare County Board in the past year. So there were jabs flying both ways. Michael Gallagher's response, as you've alluded to, he said, "The first I heard about the food was when the under-20 hurling manager Sean Doyle rang me to know what the situation was in relation to food. I explained to him it'd be the same as every year. They'd get the hot meals 3 weeks before their first championship game. He said, would I look at it? I said I'd come back to him, but I got no further correspondence from the manager of the under-20 team until I saw what was going on social media. Personally, I'd like to thank Niall O'Connor for taking it on himself to raise the money. If he did raise €4,000, fair play to him. But I would have to ask you delegates, what was his motive for that? Niall O'Connor never rang me as treasurer, and we could have gone out and spoke about it. He went off on a solo run. And then he said, I don't even know what all this is about, to be honest. Is this the same Niall O'Connor that embarrassed the county board in Thurles, where his father and the manager had to go back and apologise to the Clare County Board? Is that the same Niall O'Connor we're talking about here? Niall O'Connor never rang me as treasurer. Is this the same Niall O'Connor that the county minor manager brought on as a selector, and for some reason, best known to himself, he left for no reason? This kind of stuff was flying around, and then, Conor Clancy of Kilmally says it's a bit disingenuous to call into question Niall's motives. What Niall did is to be commended. And on it went. The Éire Óg secretary, Paddy Smith, One last quote from this meeting, which sounds eventful, obviously. So he got a bit more serious and looked at the bigger picture, and I suppose this ties in with the review committee you're talking about, Mick. He said, Michael Gallagher, that's the treasurer we've just been talking about, and Pat Fitzgerald, I have the greatest of time for the two of you. I know you're under pressure, I appreciate you're doing your best, but you, as an executive, have to look at yourselves. If you were a private company, there'd be serious questions about your performance. You people at the top of Clare GAA have to examine yourselves. This has to be stopped, and the only way you'll stop this is action, and proper action. We need open debate. Last September, November, you held 2 board meetings. One lasted 35 minutes and one lasted 29 minutes. No debate. That, if a consultant was looking at you, would say there's something seriously wrong here, lads. I'm giving it to you straight today and constructively. I have no personal agenda with any of you people. I fully realise you are Clare GAA people. We need an independent assessment, and that's what this strategic review committee will bring, end quote. So there's a lot in that.
There's a lot in that.
You can unpack all that for us.
Oh, thanks, Billion. Sound. No, I mean, yeah, like what was said there by the Air Oak secretary would be indicative, I suppose, of what would have been brought up at previous county board meetings over the past couple of months. There's a general sense among a certain cohort in Clare GAA that the county board would have questions to answer in relation to how they're doing their business. That's not to suggest any impropriety or anything like that, but people are upset, I think, about how things are being run. I think they're upset about particular issues specific to things, for example, like the Centre of Excellence in Caherlone, which cost £5 million. People would have looked at that, particularly over Christmas and into the new year, and gone, where's that money gone? We're not seeing it. There's problems with the pitches. There's problems with the facilities there. There are question marks over the running of the supporters club some years ago now, and whether that supporters club was run under the auspices of the county board. County board have been quite clear that it was run independently, which would run contrary to what the GA would like to see done. So there's and then you mentioned there, Pat Fitzgerald's name came up, and Pat Fitzgerald is a long-serving full-time secretary there in Clare, and there will be a sense among a lot of people that it's time for a change across the board in the executive, whether that's justified or not. There are certainly a lot of questions coming up at these county board meetings. I mean, even the last one, there was a question again about the terms of Pat Fitzgerald's contract, how long it is, salary, who's paying the salary, and so on and so forth. So it's getting very personal. There's an awful lot of, I don't want to say conspiracy theory, because a lot of what's backing up what people are talking about is correct and true, but the personal aspect is coming into it to the point that it's making the conversation toxic. I mean, in my time, I can't remember coming across or covering a situation in a county like this since the Cork strikes 20 years ago. It's gotten very personal, and sometimes when things get this personal, it's difficult for some people to see the wood for the trees, and you kind of have to, you'd like people to kind of step back and ask, well, why are we doing these jobs? Why are we here? What brought us to these posts in the first place, and try and work through it from that point, obviously for the betterment of Clare GAA, whether that's from the county executive side of things in terms of providing the clarity that a lot of delegates are looking for, and equally from the other side, the people who are having pot shots at people to say, well, look, we're not going to get anywhere having pot shots. Let's try and be constructive in our criticism and take it that way. But it's at the moment, it's at a stage where you have an incident like last night happening, where a county treasurer will have a go at somebody for doing something positive, and as you mentioned there, bring up an awful lot of backstory that really fundamentally, when you look at the issue at hand, which is the funding of meals for an under-20 team, don't really have anything to do with anything. These are conversations you don't have at a county board. This is a conversation you pick up a phone and go, why did you do that? Do you need to say something to me? Do I need to say something to you? But obviously that's not happening. It's all been played out in public, and it's not doing anybody any good. But that's not to say that action doesn't need to be taken, that clarity doesn't need to be provided, and that people deserve answers for the questions that they're asking.
And one last quick one, Mick Foley of the Sunday Times here talking to us. It's clear Pat Fitzgerald, in describing some of what's going on as a witch hunt, is not exactly open to dramatic change at executive level and is certainly hostile to the charges being levelled at the county board. So this review committee, they've been put in place. They're independent. I think there was toing and froing over to what extent county board people might be involved in this committee for a time. I remember reading that in the Sunday Times actually a couple of weeks or months back. But that review committee is in place, and in effect, are they having a root and branch look at what's been done at county board level, and they're going to present their findings presumably?
Yeah, that's essentially it. Clare County Board obviously have other committees set up as well, finance committees and so on and so forth, that they would have to have set up. But as far as I understand it, the Strategic Review Committee have carte blanche to look at whatever they feel needs to be looked at, and that would include something. For example, I mentioned Catherlohan again, the Centre of Excellence, which there is a Catherlohan committee in place in Clare to try and see, well, how can we actually fix the issues that are there and maximise this facility. But the Strategic Review Committee are also looking at that, an aspect of that, to see how they can help. So yeah, it's root and branch. Their findings will be expected probably in the autumn, I think. To what degree they're getting support and assistance from the county board, you'd have to ask the Strategic Review Committee that, members of that committee. You would hope for the betterment again of Clare GAA and the people who are volunteering their time at all levels, that they're getting whatever they need, because again, it's, the people who are involved in that Strategic Review Committee, looking at the names, they're all very capable people. They all have an interest in Clare GAA, and they're doing it. I would feel that they're doing it from a good place. And whatever comes from the Strategic Review Committee, obviously it will go to the county board and the county executive and the delegates to muse on and deliberate on, and they can decide what they want to do after that. But I think it's a point, it's long past the point now in Clare where, there needs to be openness, transparency. There needs to be an understanding on all sides that it's long past time that people start putting together and trying figuring out the best way forward for Clare GAA.
No, it's never dull down there. And that brings us to the next topic, I suppose, which again, the theme of two sides digging in continues. For people late to this story, or because it's been a lot of, it's kind of every 24 hours, it seems that the situation has changed. So in short, Wexford played Clare a couple of weeks back. Wexford then turned out had some positive COVID cases, and then two Clare hurlers were identified as close contacts by the HSC as a result of this match against Wexford. So Brian Lohan on Sunday, Clare manager, went in RTE, and he said, and this was after the Clare hurlers had been identified as close contacts, it was very unusual for us to hear that two of our players were nominated by two Wexford players as close contacts, particularly given one of those players only came on in the 51st minute, and he nominated one of our players. That was on Sunday. Wexford GAA responded. They weren't happy. Their chairman came out and said, in the strongest terms here, the suggestion made that members of Wexford GAA had somehow nominated Clare players as close contacts is factually incorrect. Wexford GAA have again spoken to HSC South East this morning, and this position can be independently verified by the HSC. So I thought that was, over to you, Brian Lohan, because HSC are saying, look, we can verify what Wexford are saying here. Fergal McGill, Croke Park HQ, came out and said, in this case, the decision would be with the local health authority, HSC Midwest. They would be the ones to designate close contacts. It had nothing to do with Wexford. So again, Croke Park are now in Wexford's corner. And so Clare GAA have responded this afternoon. They fully support the comments made by Brian Lohan. They say that Brian Lohan contacted the HSC. The HSC informed Brian Lohan, this is the Clare statement here, Brian Lohan, that the two players were identified on foot of discussions between the contact tracing team of the HSC and the Wexford players involved who were positive cases. The HSC did confirm that for one of the players, they were identified not by name, but they were identified by the colour of their helmet, and this has led to two players having to self-isolate. Brian Lohan stands by his comments made last Sunday in relation to the incident, and there remains much disappointment and frustration in our county in relation to why the Clare players were identified, end quote. Again, Mick, you can unpack this and tell me what the truth is here. I mean, can someone get Paul Reid on the phone? This has to go right to the top.
Well, first of all, Joe, I'd like to thank you for packaging all that up for us. That That was very nicely done. I was dreading have to go through that. Yeah, it's just so back and forth. I mean, you mentioned there the initial statement from Wexford being backed up by the GAA, kind of like a little kind of topspin return backhand across the net, and Brian comes back, or Clare GAA come back with a forehand smash down the line.
Yeah.
What comes next? Who knows? Like it's yeah. Look, it's again, there is one or two just bewildering things about this, and it's all around close contacts. Our understanding for quite a while now is that when you're playing any sport outdoors, close contacts don't come into it. You're marking a guy, you're not a close contact. That's not the case. We had a case in Offaly last year, you might remember, where there was like 27 or 28 players were deemed close contacts by one contact tracer after an Offaly player had been diagnosed with COVID. They were all at training, and they were just all deemed close contacts. And that was when everything had to be outdoors.
That was deemed OTT subsequently, though, wasn't it?
Oh, it was. That's my point. I mean, there was sort of, I suppose, that was a kind of a moment of clarity as well. I said, well, okay, what does close contact mean in this scenario? It certainly doesn't mean that. So what does close contact mean? Well, the GAA protocols, and they're in the Clare statement again, are, you have to be, potential close contact scenarios would be if you're in a gym or any other indoor training facility, if you're using the dressing room, at pre or post-match training meals, at a meeting, like tactical meetings, analysis meetings, game prep meetings, if you're traveling collectively to and from games or training, or if you're staying overnight somewhere. Which brings up the question, if two of the Wexford players had been diagnosed with COVID last week, how come all that Wexford squad hadn't been automatically deemed close contacts? Why did it take for a third case for them to be deemed close contacts, and then the Kilkenny game last week was postponed? It's due to be played Sunday now. Why were two Clare players randomly picked out? Well, not randomly, but why were two Clare players picked out, as I say, in a scenario where close contact, that's not meant to occur. It's not meant to apply on the field. As you mentioned, the GAA have essentially said, look, this is the HSE's call. The GAA don't decide who's close contacts. The HSE. Now we have these two slightly differing versions of how the HSE came to that conclusion. It would be nice if the HSE clarified precisely how this occurred. There may be privacy issues around that, though. And also, it would be probably beholden on the GAA now just to clarify again precisely the protocols around close contacts, because if it is the case that the HSE can call out guys as close contacts because the guy they were marking test positive for COVID a few days later, well, then that obviously has a huge impact going forward, as the Clare statement says. That has a huge impact on club and county activity going forward. Where it leaves us, in terms of Clare and Wexford, God only knows. And of course, we go back again to the personal thing. You have David Fitzgerald as Wexford manager, you have Brian Lohan as Clare manager. They have a history that we're all aware of. That clearly, on the surface, clearly has nothing to do with this. This is all about, to me, this comes back to the HSE designating guys close contacts who are on the field and the ramifications therein. That's the big question, really, and the most impactful question going forward for everybody.
Yeah, I agree. For all the tittle-tattle and, that's going on here, and HSE have told us X and HSE have told us Y, that is the really significant point potentially going forward, because even it was front page of the Sunday Times maybe back in March, I think, when there was a study released of the past year, I think, in effect, and experts revealed that not a single case of on-the-field transmission of COVID-19 had been confirmed in rugby union, in soccer, in rugby league or American football during a full year. And this was, fantastic news. They'd done some detailed tracing and found it was all the ancillary activities, the transport, the meetings, dressing room, etc., but nothing on the field. And Anthony Daly, even in the Irish Examiner, made the very fair point again, and the GAA and HSE, I guess, will have to figure this out pretty soon. He said, before that game 8 days ago, I saw the Wexford players gathered in a tight huddle. At the last water break, Davy Fitzgerald gathered all those players around him in a circle to issue instructions. One of the Wexford players who tested positive was in that huddle. So if the guys right beside him weren't considered close contacts, how in the name of God was the Clare fella he was marking deemed a close contact? I don't have an answer for that question.
There is an answer for that question. He's not a close contact.
Wow.
I mean, by all scientific
Yeah.
knowledge that we have at this point, and as per the GAA return to play protocols, the guys on the field were not close contacts.
So is there a possibility here that in the tracing team talking to the Wexford players, it turns out that, oh yeah, listen, we're good mates and we're in the same car after the match type thing like that? That would explain it more than we were in each other's general circumference for the match.
That is the only logical explanation, and I have no idea. Number one, we don't know publicly anyway who the players involved are. We don't know. We just don't know. And as I say, it's not that we even want to know. I mean, and you hit the nail on the head there. The words tittle-tattle, right? Clear off the tittle-tattle here, like. And the main issue here is, okay, what do we need to redefine again what close contact means in a GAA context? And I mean the HSE's definition of close contact. As you said there, it has been conclusively proven and shown that the chances of contracting COVID-19 on the field during a game from standing by a guy is practically zero. It is not a close contact scenario. It is not. So that was the bewildering bit for me. How can you pick two random guys out of a crowd and not have the 20 or 30 odd, however many people travel from Wexford, who stayed overnight and played the game. We're in a dressing room. Remember, we can use dressing rooms now as well, which is different to last year. They were all in close proximity. How come they weren't deemed close contacts? There are and this isn't kind of like picking on Wexford or picking on Clare. This stuff has ramifications for every county and club going forward, and it's we need the clarity. We just need the clarity.
Yeah.
And I mean, in at a time where the HSE is dealing with ransomware issues and various different things that were probably deemed much bigger issues than this. Well, this is actually quite a big issue because the GAA is a gigantic organisation.
Yeah.
And if we do have more COVID cases down the way, well, what does close contact mean? Because it could impact on a huge amount of people.
Yeah, it's very strange, I have to say. I mean, you've got the Wexford chairman coming out, you've got Brian Lohan coming out, on the face of it, two serious people in conversation with the HSE coming up with totally different stories. Maybe they were mates and were in the car together afterwards theory is blown open by the suggestion, I think, on Lohan's part that the HSE were told, well, it was your man based on the colour of his helmet as opposed to his name. So that doesn't sound like they're best mates hanging out together afterwards. So I don't know. I presume by tomorrow we'll have the Wexford response, and I don't know where that one ends. Just before you go, Mick, good news, I guess, in terms of moving towards normality. Ulster GAA, they're pretty hopeful. They're going to have fans at games as early as this weekend, I think, because there's a loosening of restrictions in the 6 counties.
Yeah, it's looking good. Obviously, look, the vaccination process in the north is going at a much better rate than here. Or a much quicker rate, anyway, I should say. So yeah, it's going to be good to see. My understanding, I know the statement has just come out there a little while, so I haven't had a proper look at it. But my understanding is that I think certainly they won't be on general sale, these tickets. I think they'll be sold through the clubs, so there'll be a certain limit on it. And obviously, you have Armagh playing Donegal this weekend and Tyrone are playing Monaghan. So you have two teams from the Republic involved there. Their supporters won't be in the ground. But look, it's good to see people back, and hopefully, if there were stories at the weekend that we could have significant numbers in stadia, certainly by the All-Ireland semi-finals, which would be really good.
I heard Micheál Martin on with Clare Byrne then on, what day is today? Tuesday. So yesterday morning, and he was cool on that one, I would say. Very cool on that one. Caution is very much the order of the day. So, look, who knows? Predicting these things makes fools of us all. Mick Foley of the Sunday Times, thanks so much.
No problem, Joe.